bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here.
Hey everybody, and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be playing with our 8x10 gel press plate and some pastels and even a little bit of eyeshadow just to get some extra pops of color. This is actually the James Charles palette from Morphe. Yes, you can use your eyeshadow in this too. And we're also going to be using this stencil that's from the Crafter's Workshop by Rebecca Meyer. So I'm going to start just by lining it up. Since I am using a word, you're going to notice that my word is backwards right now. So that way when I flip my gel press plate over, my word will be going the correct way. I'm going to be using just these cheap little eyeshadow applicators that I got at Walmart for this particular technique. And I'm just lining it up so it just was a little bit straighter. And the reason I'm using this palette is because it's got a really great just dark black in it. And I'm just using my eyeshadow applicator just to lightly fill in all of those letters. And you can see I'm getting a good crisp image. You'll see better when I move the stencil in just a moment. And I'm going to speed through this just a little bit because, you know, it's the same technique over and over, at least 4 times. So you can see I've got a really great crisp black word there. So today we're actually using the scripture from Deuteronomy 31 verse 6 that says, "Be strong and courageous, don't be terrified or afraid of them, for the Lord your God is the one who will go with you. He will not leave you or abandon you." And we actually sang the song that is in the margins that's called "You Make Me Brave." While I'm doing that, I'm going to find out who sings that because I honestly cannot remember. And we sang it this morning in church, and I was singing it on the worship team, and it just really struck me. This is actually the bridge of that song, and it says, "You make me brave, you make me brave. You called me out beyond the shore into the waves. You make me brave, you make me brave. No fear can hinder now the love that made a way." And I just love that particular line, "You called me out beyond the shore into the waves." And that definitely takes some bravery that sometimes only God can give us. And you can see right now I'm also taking another stencil by Rebecca Myers. That's a 12x12 stencil, and it's got just these great kind of grungy graphic prints and stuff, and I'm just adding some color to my background, just mixing some pinks and some purples. And I'm just going to take that pattern all over, and I'm going to make sure to take my stencil and just rotate it just a quarter of a turn, just so I don't end up with the exact same image repeated, just that it, even though it is the same image, since it's going a different way, it just is same but different. Does that make sense? And you can see, you'll see better here in a little bit. And you might be wondering about my plate, why it's yellow. So I do a lot of alcohol ink, and that can tend to tint the gel press plate yellow. It doesn't affect my patterns or affect any of the durometer, which is the squishability of my plate. It doesn't affect it anyway. It just makes it yellow. No big deal. And so now I'm using a different stencil and doing kind of an ombre yellow and orange feel. You're also going to notice I've got a piece of tape going down the middle. I measured out how big my border is going to be in my illustrating Bible. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't accidentally make my image too wide, so when I went to go put it in my Bible it wouldn't fit. So that's just my little guide to make sure to stay over on that left hand side of my plate. So I'm just adding some nice orange, and then I'm going to go back in, oh, I already did, I added some orange and some yellow and some red to that. And now I'm just kind of cleaning up, getting stuff out of my way, and I'm just going to use just a white acrylic. My headphone cords are in the way. So I've got my gel press economy brayer and my small gel press plate. This one's super great just for paint applicating or cleaning your brayer off in between and that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to use it just to add a thin layer of just plain white acrylic paint over my project. And doing this technique, you might be wondering why I wouldn't just put those pigments just directly into my journaling Bible. Well, the reason for that is doing this particular technique, the pigments are now adhering to that acrylic paint. You can see here, I'm going to go ahead and line up my image here. And some of my stuff is stuck to the back. I'll grab it off here in a second. But the reason the reason this technique is great is because those pigments are now stuck in that acrylic paint, so you're not going to have to worry about having to put any kind of fixative over it or anything of that nature, or worry about it coming up or anything like that. So you can see I'm peeling that off, and I've got just a great graphic background. My words brave are bold on there. They kind of have that great grungy, funky, subway, stencil-y kind of feel. I don't know if that's a real thing, but that's what it looks like to me. And you see I've got all my colors in my background, and I've got that great graphic print, and I was able to obviously not cover my words because I just butted my gel press plate right up against it. And before I started this, I just printed out those simple words in just a Word document, and then just printed them out. I'm making sure my my paint is completely dry. Obviously, when you use gel press, it's so thin that it dries super, super fast. So that was just to make sure kind of pass. And so I'm actually going to use some clear gesso, which I don't typically use for adhering things down, but this is like super, super thin, just copy paper, and so it doesn't take a lot to adhere it down. It's not like it has any weight, or it's not like thick, and I actually really like it because it keeps the consistency of the texture on my piece. And so now I'm just have kind of cut those into little strips, and I'm kind of playing around with it just to see how I want it to line up, where I want it to go, how I want my words to be grouped whenever I cut them. And so I'm just kind of playing with it and moving it around. And I'm kind of happy. I can't decide what to do with a couple of these, and I put way too much space between that third and that fourth brave. So, you know, there's that. And so just like you would with like a Mod Podge or a matte gel medium, I'm just adding a little bit underneath, sticking my piece of paper down, and then just adding a thin layer over it. Again, because this paper is so thin, it does not take a whole lot, so I'm speeding through this because you know how this works. Literally, you just sandwich it in between. And I'm just kind of adhering those all down. So I don't know if you guys' churches are back in session. This is the third week for us. And it's the first time I've gotten to sing since we opened back. So it was definitely a little different seeing people in masks. But you know what? They were there and they were worshiping, and we were live streaming for those people that weren't comfortable being there. But there is just something to be said about being in church and singing live and singing, you know, in that way. And especially if you're a musician anyway, you know that there's just something in your spirit that just needs to lead people in worship, where you just don't feel fulfilled. So while that's drying, I've grabbed my Faber-Castell PITT artist pins with the brush tip, and I'm just going to use those just to highlight my verse. Again, that's Deuteronomy 31:6. And I'm using that pink and kind of just giving it smearage. Is that a word? Smearage. Just so it is less just crisp, and it's a little more grungy like my background is. And then I'm trying to decide which gray to use at this point. Just to be on the safe side, I'm actually going to start with the lighter gray. I'm giving it just a quick hit with my heat gun right now, just to make sure that all of that clear gesso is dry before I do this next step. So I'm going to start out with a light gray. I'm doing it, I'm adding some shadows. I'm not loving it because I don't feel like it's drastic enough, but I went ahead and did all of it just to see if I liked it, and just to add more depth, because it never hurts to have a couple of colors in the same color family when you're trying to do a shadow. And so I got done with that and realized, needs a little more, so I went one step darker, and it went actually to a cool gray, but it's just a little bit darker. And that's just gonna not only make those words pop a little more, it's also gonna camouflage those edges of my strips of paper, so again it's not so drastic straight lines, and it kind of goes more with that kind of grungy background that I'm going for, and grunge feel of this entire project. And so I'm just taking it and just putting some lines around, and then while it's wet, just taking my finger and dragging it over just to smear it a little bit, and again, keep it grungy, keep it funky, and make sure I don't have super straight lines. So I decided I wanted to do a little title, and before I did it on my paper, I just grabbed a scrap piece of paper I had. This was left over from when I did my strips of paper, and I wanted to do these 3 words. I'm not super great at like pretty handwriting or whatever, So I played with it first and I was like, oh, I don't hate it. And so I'm just gonna write those 3 words that kind of stuck out to me the most, and I felt like being brave comes from being strong and being courageous and being unafraid, and I feel like those words are all very synonymous. And now I'm just going to do the exact same thing that I did with my word strips on the other side. I'm starting out with the lighter gray just to add some shadow, and then, and again, hand lettering, not my forte, so I'm sure you're gonna see prettier hand lettering somewhere, but you know, it's all a learning experience. And so I'm just gonna add those light shades, that light shadow all around it, and then you're gonna see here in just a minute, I'm gonna go back and add just a little bit of that dark gray again, just to give it that extra oomph illusion of a shadow around my title. And you can see how even just adding that little bit of dark gray with that light gray just makes it pop even more. I also like the fact that even though I am writing over the words because of this kind of pen or marker, whatever you want to call it, I guess it's a marker, I can still read the rest of my scripture through it, so I'm not completely covering my words and that kind of stuff. And so I'm just adding those pops of that darker color in there. Yes, almost done. And then of course, always, like I tell everyone, oh, I guess I need to add a little bit more dark here and there. And then always date your projects. And then I'm just going to do one more thing. I'm just going to highlight my verse just a little bit more with that dark, just to give it a little bit more pop. And that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's project. Let me know down in the comments if you give it a try, and come back on Friday for another video. Thanks so much and have a great day.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see.